The stories in this episode are from various subreddits. Okay, hello fellow beings. Today's episode is about BEKs. For those of you who aren't really familiar with them, it's a kind of an urban legend about black-eyed kids that show up at people's doorsteps or will stop you and ask you questions. They need something and they want your assistance, but there's an overall very creepy vibe that comes with them. Probably the one urban legend that kind of creeps me out because I almost imagine it happening, like it being possible. This urban legend goes back not that far in most circles. There's a lot of debate on, does it go back to the 1990s or does it go back further? People dig up different things, different stories pop up all over the place. I don't know myself. Some people think they might be supernatural beings. Some people think they might be alien hybrid creatures. Many stories. If you really want to know more, you're going to have to just go out there and research it. Some people claim to have true stories about them, so that's why I am here. I am here to read you a few stories about black-eyed kids. Okay, and with that little intro out of the way...
Number 5.
A friend of mine, a very straight material reality sort of guy, had an experience where he was working on his car in his rural front yard, and a kid walked up to him and said,
"It's time, are you coming?"
He was fighting with a battery lead, so he just glanced up and just distractedly said, "I'm not done yet." Then it clicked how totally odd that was, and he looked around, but there was no sign of the kid anywhere. He was never sure if the kid's eyes were black or just dark brown though, because the kid had on a hooded coat.
Number 4.
A childhood friend's mother told me this story, swearing on her children's lives that it happened. Anyway, one afternoon when the kids were in school, she was doing some washing, and as she was walking up the stairs, she said she saw a small girl with straight black hair who sat at the top of the stairs with her head in her hands. She gasped and just thought another kid had gotten into the house somehow. She asked the girl if she was okay, only for the girl to look up at her with completely black eyes before running into the nearby room and disappearing.
Number 3.
Location is Tavares, Florida. Date January 20th, 2014. At about 10:20 at night. The witness had just left work and was taking a less traveled road home, Old 441. Everything was going as normal on his typical drive home until he came to a red light. No cars on the road at all, just him sitting there. Suddenly, it seemed to the witness as if time had stood still, and the sounds became very long and drawn out. When he came to a stop, out of the darkness on the passenger side of the car, all of a sudden, a teenager appeared. He was about 15 feet from the car. He was wearing blue jeans and a hoodie that was up over his head. From what the witness could see, it appeared he had little to no facial features, especially the eyes. The eyes were blacker than darkness. The witness felt fear beyond explanation. He turned his gaze off the teenager and looked back toward the light when he saw what looked like an identical twin crossing the road, very, very slowly in front of his car, as though to hold him up if the light did change. The next thing he knew, the boy was at the side of his car, approaching the car as though he was going to get in. The witness was filled with an overwhelming fear and thought he was going to die. At the time, he remembers thinking, "This is the angel of death." He thought about running the light and had a feeling that somehow the two strange figures were talking to each other without talking aloud. As far as he knows, the figure never touched the car. A car started to approach from behind and the light changed. As he was leaving, he looked back and both boys were gone. The witness was so frightened that he thought that the two strange beings were going to show up at his house, but thankfully they did not.
Number 2.
June 25th, 2012 is when this event took place. I had somewhat of a strange thing happen. I woke up around 3-ish with my puppy Chihuahua Bootsy sitting on my chest, whining at me and looking around all frantic-like. I figured she needed to go out, so I grabbed my phone and looked at the time. It was 3:13 a.m. That was weird. Both of my dogs were very regular about their potty breaks, but when you gotta go, you gotta go. My other dog, Mabel, was staring intently into the living room, not moving, just looking. I heard a tapping on the front door. Also strange, my dogs made no noise, just Bootsy softly whining as she followed me down the hall. I left my phone on the sofa right next to our bedroom door to get the leashes and whatnot to take the dogs out. When I opened it, 2 children between 5 to 6-ish in age range wearing some type of grayish black tunic that almost looked like a dress, it was so big, were standing there. The girls spoke right off the bat.
Hi, we need to come in.
As I had just woken up, I was a little dumbfounded and all I could say was, "Huh?" And she repeated the statement.
Hi, we need to come in.
Then I asked, "Where are your parents?" And the boy broke in before I finished my sentence.
Hi, we need to come in now.
Then I started to observe them a little more closely as they were standing with the screen door half opened. They had porcelain-looking skin, almost paper-like, twin doll figures, and an androgynous look about them, other than their haircuts and their eyes. Their eyes felt and looked very strange, void and completely black. I didn't know if it was a lack of light or what, but it was the boy's tone next that really started to alert me, and my mind started to scream, "Danger!"
We need to come in now.
I was, for some reason, about to open the door for them and go get my phone I had left on the sofa to call their parents, when Mabel, this Chihuahua is scared of absolutely nothing except vacuums, starts urinating all over herself, behavior I have never seen, and whining so bad, which is something I have never seen her do. Bootsy is a whining dog, but I have never gotten that out of Mabel. And a side note, Chihuahuas were worshipped and praised in ancient Mexico, and they do not let their owners forget it. So I slightly snapped out of what I was doing and just looked back at the kids, and they had both taken a step closer inside the door frame. Now to see them right in front of my face and their eyes, just like black pools of knowledge and venom. Then I blacked out because my mind was overwhelmed. Or was dreaming the whole thing. The next thing I knew was my girlfriend came out and was asking me why I was passed out on the porch. It felt like bullets were shot into my head, and I just wanted to go back to bed as she questioned me why I slept on the couch, because that usually meant there were problems between us. I couldn't recall anything. Then I noticed the time. It was time for her to go to work. She worked at the state capitol, and they started work at 7 a.m., so I had lost a bit of time between whatever happened and her waking me. My mouth tasted metallic, so I went to get a drink and stepped in dog pee. Didn't think anything of it till the next morning, because that was the only real physical evidence I had of it not being a dream, because I remembered my dog wildly pissing all over the place like she wanted to paint the room yellow. I wasn't on any mind-altering drugs or have had anything like this happen to me before. Strange for sure, and I did get the feeling in the end that they meant me harm in some way. In what way, I don't exactly know, but I have only blacked out once in my life. And that was on my 21st birthday after I had too many shots.
Number 1.
I had never heard of black-eyed children until I encountered them. Still not knowing who or what the hell they were, I did what any modern 25-year-old male would do. I Googled them. And boy, I was shocked that I wasn't the only one. Had I not seen them for myself, I would have just thought it was another modern urban legend gone viral. Besides my girlfriend, I've only told my brother, who is into everything creepy and horror, and I knew he would be the only one not to judge me, or try and commit me to a mental hospital. He's the one who said I should post it here. I am simply trying to warn people that some things out in this world are beyond our comprehension, and if you hear a knock at the door, make sure you check before opening it. I wish I had. Here's my story. My girlfriend and I live in a small gated community in southern West Virginia called Glade Springs. The community has about 150 houses, a country club, and a steakhouse bar called Bunkers. Now, anyone can come through the gate during the business hours of Bunkers, but after they close, the front security gate stops all traffic and makes sure you are a resident, and if you're a visitor, they call the house that you're going to verify that you are actually expecting them. Sometimes it's a hassle, but hey, don't have to worry about a robbery. So imagine my surprise when my doorbell chimed at 3 a.m. I was jarred awake and wasn't sure if it wasn't a dream, considering I had just went to bed shortly before and was probably going into REM sleep. I rolled over and looked at my clock, noticing the time when my doorbell chimed again. I felt a cold chill run through my body. Not reading too much into it, it could be one of my neighbors has an emergency, right? I nonchalantly made my way to the door. Now I see how foolish I really was, and opened it. Luckily, the wrought iron storm door was still locked, because who or what stood before me was not a resident of the community. 2 young boys stood at my doorstep, one looking about 17 and another looking about 10, wearing dark hooded sweatshirts and jeans. The young one had shaggy, dirty blonde hair and would only look down at the stone steps, and the other one had his hood pulled up and his head tipped to where I could only see from half his nose down. My voice caught in my throat, and before I could even ask what they wanted, the older one spoke. His voice sounded forced and dry. There was no emotion or sincerity of what he said.
I'm sorry to bother you and your girlfriend, but we need to come in and use your phone. We've been in an accident.
I felt the familiar chill return to my whole body. How did he know my girlfriend was here? I wrote it off as my Tahoe and her VW was in the driveway, and I figured they just assumed. I tripped over my words. Something about these kids wasn't right. It wasn't normal. It wasn't human. I can bring you my cell phone and you can call. I don't get service inside here, so you have to stand on the sidewalk to call, I finally said nervously. Of course, I was lying through my clenched teeth. I did not want these kids in my house.
Well, my brother really needs to use your bathroom, Kane. We have to come in,
the older one said, and that's when I went into complete panic. He knew my name? He knew my name. I'm sorry, are you from here? How did you know my name? The words practically shook out of my mouth. That's when he became slightly hostile and demanded to be let inside, and I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't help him, I was about to close the main door, and then this happened. The both of them snapped their heads upward and looked me straight in the eyes. Black. No iris. No pupil. No retina. Just pure, deep black. I was paralyzed with fear. For a second, I thought those kids were just playing a really cruel joke and had snuck into the community somehow and had brought some of those freaky supernatural demon Slara contacts. That was until I heard ringing. It was like a ringing sound that you hear when you had a hearing test done, that digital high-pitched shrill ringing, and then the flashback started. I was suddenly a toddler again at my grandparents' house, sitting under the chestnut tree with my mother picking up nuts and putting them in a large metal soup kettle. It was a crisp fall day. It's one of my earliest and dearest memories. I was about 3 and even have a picture, and a memory I hold very dear to my heart. But then they were there, behind my mother. We locked eyes, their eyes still black as night, and suddenly they smiled simultaneously. That's when everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was shaken awake lying on the mudroom floor, my girlfriend standing over me with a worried look. "What the hell, Kane?" she asked. I had no idea how to answer her. My head had taken a good whack against the slate floor, and a bit of dried blood was stuck in my hair, but other than that, I was physically fine. I slowly remembered everything that had happened, and I looked at the door. Daylight. I've never been so happy to see morning in all my life. I told my girlfriend everything that happened, and I honestly think she thought I could have had brain damage from hitting the floor. But she insisted she believed me. And we Googled it, and I believe that's when she really started to believe me. I don't know who or what they are, or where they came from, but they're not of this world. I know that for a fact. For some reason, I had a lingering thought. I'm still not sure if they put the thoughts in my head or not. For some reason, I had a lingering thought that they wanted me to know that even my memories aren't safe. They are very strong and seem to be growing in numbers. For some reason, they seem to not be able to hurt you physically unless you invite them in, which I don't know since either no one has ever let them in, or the ones that have aren't around to tell their story anymore. But they can get to your mind. Since that night, I feel as though I'm being watched. I see them out of the corner of my eye occasionally. I'll look at my girlfriend while we're at the movies or diner, and her eyes will be solid black for a split second. And worst of all, they took one of my most precious and most often reminisced memories and turned it into something sinister. Something that's now a constant reminder of the black-eyed children. Hey fellow beings, thanks for listening. So what's your thoughts on the black-eyed children or black-eyed kids? As I was researching this topic, I also found there's a lot of stories just about black-eyed adults, and that's really kind of interesting considering that the stories on black-eyed kids have been progressively growing over the last 20 years or so, and now stories are starting to surface about black-eyed adults. So it really kind of almost makes you wonder if something maybe started back then and now it's catching up. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud now. But thanks again for watching my video. If you liked it, please leave a like. And if you don't want to miss anything, go ahead and click subscribe. And I will post another video next week, if not sooner. Like I said, I'm very busy, so I try to do this when I can. But I will do it at least once a week. Once again, thanks for listening. And I will catch you guys in the future. Until then,
Be aware and keep your eyes open.